Most people think manipulation is obvious, but the most dangerous manipulation feels normal. A little guilt, a little pressure, a little fear, a little validation, and before they realize it, their emotions are no longer theirs. Because most people react instantly, and people who react instantly are easy to control. The Stoics understood this thousands of years ago. They knew that the person who controls your emotions controls your decisions. That's why Stoicism was never just philosophy. It was psychological armor. Today, manipulation is everywhere. People manipulate with attention, with outrage, with fear, with approval, and with urgency. And the scary part is, most people never notice it happening. They think they're making free decisions, while their emotions are being pulled like strings. That's why Stoics train themselves differently. They train themselves to pause before reacting, to stay calm under pressure, to think clearly when everyone else became emotional. Because a calm mind is hard to manipulate. And in this video, you'll learn 7 Stoic habits that make manipulation stop working on you. Rule number 1. Pause before reacting. Most people don't realize how much of their life is controlled by emotional reactions. Someone disrespects them, and they react instantly. Someone pressures them, and they panic. Someone makes them feel guilty, and they immediately give in. Manipulators depend on this. Because the moment emotions take control, logic disappears. That's why Stoics trained themselves to pause before responding to anything emotional. Not because they were emotionless, but because they understood something dangerous about human nature. An emotional person is predictable, and predictable people are easy to control. Think about how manipulation usually works. Someone raises their voice to intimidate you. Someone creates urgency so you don't think clearly. Someone accuses you emotionally so you feel forced to defend yourself. Most people react automatically. They answer too quickly. They explain too much. They defend themselves emotionally. And without realizing it, they hand control of the situation to the other person. But Stoics did the opposite. The moment pressure appeared, they slowed down. Because they knew that calmness creates clarity. And clarity breaks manipulation. Imagine someone trying to provoke you into anger. Most people would react immediately. They would argue, shout, or say something emotional they regret later. But a Stoic pauses. And that pause changes everything. Because the manipulator expects emotional chaos. They expect you to lose control. They expect emotional access to your mind. But when you stay calm, their strategy stops working. That's why silence can feel so powerful. Not fake silence. Not emotionless behavior. Real silence. The kind that comes from emotional control. The kind that says, I refuse to let emotions make my decisions. This is why so many people become uncomfortable around calm individuals. Because emotional manipulation works best on emotional reactions. And when someone stays composed under pressure, it becomes difficult to control them. Rule number 2. Stop needing validation. This is one of the biggest psychological traps in modern life. Most people are controlled by approval without even noticing it. They change their personality to be liked. They stay silent to avoid criticism. They say yes when they want to say no. They chase attention, compliments, and acceptance. And because of that, they become extremely easy to manipulate. Because if someone controls your need for approval, they control your behavior. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that self-worth should come from character, not from other people's opinions. Because the moment your happiness depends on external validation, your emotions become controlled by external people. That's why some people can completely change your mood with one compliment, or destroy your confidence with one criticism. Your emotional state becomes dependent on their approval. And manipulators know this. They use praise when they want influence. They use guilt when they want obedience. They use rejection when they want control. But Stoics train themselves differently. Instead of asking, do people approve of me? They asked, am I acting with discipline, honesty, and self-respect? That mindset changes everything. Because when you stop needing constant approval, people lose one of their biggest weapons against you. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop chasing acceptance. You stop sacrificing your peace just to avoid disappointing people. And suddenly, manipulation becomes much easier to recognize. Rule number 3. Separate facts from emotions. This is rare today. Most people don't react to reality. They react to emotional interpretations of reality. And manipulators exploit this constantly. They exaggerate. They generalize. They use emotional language to distort situations. You never care about me. Everyone thinks you're wrong. You always ruin things. Notice the pattern. Extreme emotional statements designed to trigger guilt, fear, or defensiveness. And most people fall into the trap immediately. They react emotionally instead of analyzing what's actually true. But Stoics train themselves to question emotional reactions before believing them. Instead of reacting instantly, they would mentally step back and ask, is this objectively true, or is this emotionally charged? That single question can protect you from countless forms of manipulation. Because emotions are powerful, but emotions are not always accurate. Someone can feel ignored without actually being ignored. Someone can feel offended without being attacked. Someone can speak emotionally without speaking truthfully. Stoics understood that emotions should be observed, not blindly obeyed. That doesn't mean ignoring emotions completely. It means refusing to let emotions replace reality. And in today's world, that habit is more powerful than ever. Because modern manipulation rarely uses force. It uses emotional confusion. It keeps people reactive, distracted, offended, fearful, desperate for approval. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Slow down, observe carefully, question emotional pressure, and protect your ability to think clearly. Because once someone controls your emotions, they slowly begin controlling your decisions. Rule number 4. Become comfortable with discomfort. This is where most people lose control of themselves. Because the average person will do almost anything to avoid discomfort. They avoid difficult conversations. They avoid rejection. They avoid loneliness. They avoid uncertainty. They avoid pain. And because of that, fear becomes the perfect tool for manipulation. If someone knows what you're afraid of losing, they know how to control you. That's why Stoics intentionally trained themselves to become comfortable with discomfort. Not because suffering is good, but because dependence on comfort creates weakness. Think about it. If you're terrified of rejection, people can manipulate you with approval. If you're terrified of being alone, people can manipulate you with attention. If you're terrified of discomfort, people can manipulate you with fear. Most manipulation works because people are desperate to avoid emotional pain. But Stoics believe that avoiding every uncomfortable feeling makes the mind fragile. So instead of running from discomfort, they faced it voluntarily. They practiced discipline. They practiced restraint. They learned how to stay calm even when life became uncomfortable. Because once discomfort stops scaring you, manipulation loses power over you. You stop making emotional decisions just to feel temporary relief. And that changes your entire mindset. Rule number 5. Control your desires. Modern society is built around impulse. Everything around you is designed to control your attention, your cravings, and your emotions. Social media wants your attention. Advertising wants your desires. Entertainment wants your time. And most people never notice how addicted they've become to stimulation. They constantly need distraction, validation, pleasure, dopamine. And the more impulsive a person becomes, the easier they are to manipulate. Because whoever controls your impulses controls your behavior. That's why Stoics treated self-control like a superpower. They understood that freedom is impossible without discipline. If you can't control your desires will control you. And manipulators understand this perfectly. They sell urgency. They sell emotional pleasure. They create addiction. They create comparison. They create endless dissatisfaction. Because dissatisfied people are easier to influence. Think about how many people buy things emotionally, react emotionally, scroll endlessly without thinking, seek attention without purpose. Most people are not acting consciously anymore. They're reacting automatically. But Stoics trained themselves to resist impulses instead of obeying them. They practice patience, restraint, awareness, because the ability to say no to yourself is real power. The moment you stop being controlled by cravings, you start thinking more clearly. And clear thinkers are difficult to manipulate. Rule number 6. Observe more than you speak. Most people reveal everything too quickly. Their emotions, their insecurities, their anger, their desperation. And manipulators pay attention to all of it. Because people expose themselves when they speak emotionally. The Stoics understood something important. The person talking constantly is usually not the person in control. That's why they valued observation. Instead of reacting immediately, they watched carefully. They studied behavior, patterns, tone, intentions. Because calm observation reveals things emotional reactions never notice. Think about it. Manipulative people often expose themselves through small patterns. They guilt people when they don't get attention. They become kind only when they want something. They create drama to gain emotional control. They pressure people into fast decisions. But emotional people miss these patterns because they're too busy reacting. Stoics slowed down enough to notice them, and that awareness protected them. Silence also creates another kind of power. Because when you speak less, people reveal more. Most people become uncomfortable with silence. So they keep talking. They explain too much. They expose their intentions without realizing it. Meanwhile, the calm observer gains information without giving away emotional control. But this doesn't mean becoming cold or antisocial. That's where a lot of people misunderstand Stoicism. Stoicism is not about acting emotionless. It's about acting consciously. There's a difference. An emotionless person suppresses feelings. A Stoic understands feelings without becoming controlled by them. And that mindset changes the way you interact with the world. Because once you stop reacting impulsively, stop chasing validation, stop fearing discomfort, and stop obeying every desire, you become much harder to manipulate. Not because you control others, but because others stop controlling you. Rule number 7. Accept what you cannot control. This is the habit that connects all the others. And according to the Stoics, this is where real mental freedom begins. Most people spend their entire lives trying to control things they were never meant to control. Other people's opinions, other people's behavior, the future, outcomes, rejection, loss, failure. And because they become emotionally attached to controlling these things, they become easy to manipulate. Because manipulation becomes powerful the moment fear takes over. Fear of losing someone, fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of not getting the outcome they want. That fear makes people desperate, and desperate people make emotional decisions. The Stoics understood something most people never fully accept. You cannot control everything that happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it. That single idea changes everything. Because once you stop obsessing over things outside your control, people lose one of the biggest emotional weapons they have against you. Think about how many people stay trapped in toxic situations because they're terrified of losing someone. How many people stay silent because they fear judgment? How many people destroy their peace trying to force outcomes they can't control? That constant emotional attachment creates suffering. And manipulators use that suffering against people every single day. But Stoics train themselves differently. They focus their energy only on what belonged to them. Their actions, their mindset, their discipline, their decisions. And they learn to let go of everything else. Not in a weak way, not in a careless way, in a strong way. Because accepting reality takes more strength than denying it. Most people think strength means controlling everything around you. But Stoics believe true strength meant controlling yourself even when life becomes chaotic. That's why calm people seem powerful. Not because life is easy for them, but because they stop fighting reality emotionally. And when someone reaches that level of mental discipline, manipulation becomes much harder. Because fear stops controlling them. Pressure stops controlling them. Approval stops controlling them. Their emotions stop being controlled by every external situation. And that is rare today. Because modern life constantly trains people to stay emotionally reactive, to seek validation, to compare themselves constantly, to panic over uncertainty, to chase endless distraction. And over time, people lose control of their own minds without even realizing it. That's why Stoicism still matters thousands of years later. Not because it turns people emotionless, but because it teaches people how to remain calm in a world designed to disturb them. A Stoic still feels emotions. They still feel anger, pain, fear, disappointment. The difference is that they refuse to become servants to those emotions. They observe them, control them, and move forward with clarity. Because the strongest person in the room is usually not the loudest one. It's the person who stays calm when everyone else loses control. The person who cannot be pressured emotionally. The person who thinks before reacting. The person who remains disciplined when others become impulsive. That kind of mindset is difficult to manipulate. And that's why Stoicism was never about becoming cold. It was about becoming mentally free. Free from emotional control. Free from manipulation. Free from the constant chaos created by uncontrolled reactions. Because once your mind belongs to you again, other people lose the power to control your direction. And in today's world, that may be one of the rarest forms of strength left. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, which of these stoic habits do you think is the hardest to master?